Imagine a new continent, not one of rock and soil, not one teeming with natural forests or ancient mountains. This new land is different. It is a land made by us, by humanity, but it is not a monument to our ingenuity. Instead, it is a testament to our carelessness. This vast, sprawling expanse is made almost entirely of our discarded waste. It floats, a colossal stain upon the surface of our precious blue planet. It is a chilling discovery, a stark reminder of the impact we have on the world around us. This is not a distant problem, it is here. Now, this eighth continent, as some have called it, is not solid ground. You cannot walk upon it. It is a thick, swirling soup of debris. Plastic bottles bob alongside fishing nets. Tiny fragments of plastic, like a toxic confetti, cloud the water for miles. It is a place where nature is struggling. Seabirds mistake bottle caps for food. Turtles become entangled in discarded bags. This is a man-made ecosystem, but one that chokes life rather than nurtures it. The scale is almost too large to comprehend. It is a floating island of our own making, a symbol of a global crisis. The idea of a whole new landmass composed of rubbish might sound like science fiction, perhaps something from a dystopian film, yet the reality is disturbingly close to this vision. Scientists and explorers have ventured into these garbage patches. They have documented the sheer volume of human refuse accumulating in our oceans. What they've found is profoundly troubling. It forces us to confront the consequences of a throwaway culture, a culture that has treated the vast oceans as a limitless dumping ground. The sea, once a symbol of pristine wilderness, now bears these ugly scars. We must look closely at this phenomenon. We must understand how it came to be. This is not just about litter, it is about the materials we create. It is about how we use them, and crucially, it is about how we dispose of them. The story of this trash island is a story about ourselves. It is a story about our relationship with the natural world. It is a challenge that requires us to think differently. It demands that we act with greater responsibility towards the planet that sustains us all. The future of our oceans, and indeed our planet, depends on it. Deep in the North Pacific Ocean, far from any coastline, lies the most infamous of these trash accumulations. It is known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It is not a single solid island of plastic, as the name might suggest. Instead, it is an enormous area where ocean currents, known as gyres, have concentrated vast quantities of debris. Think of it as a colossal vortex. It slowly churns, trapping waste from across the Pacific Rim. This patch is a stark illustration of how our actions on land can have far-reaching consequences at sea. It is a silent, swirling monument to our plastic addiction. The sheer size of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is staggering. Estimates vary, but it is thought to cover an area of roughly 1.6 million square kilometers. That is twice the size of Texas, or 3 times the size of France. Imagine that. An area that vast, filled with floating plastic. Some studies suggest it contains over 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic. This weighs an estimated 80,000 tons. The majority of this mass is not from large, easily identifiable items. It comes from larger items that have broken down into smaller, more insidious pieces over time, due to sunlight and wave action. The location of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is remote. It lies roughly halfway between Hawaii and California. This remoteness means it is out of sight for most people. But out of sight should not mean out of mind. Its existence is a direct result of human activity from countries far and wide. The currents act like giant conveyor belts. They collect rubbish from coastal areas, from rivers, and from ships. They carry it thousands of miles. Eventually, this debris finds its way into the calm center of the gyre. There, it accumulates, year after year, growing ever larger. The waste found here is diverse, a sad catalogue of our modern lives. Discarded fishing nets, known as ghost nets, make up a significant portion. These nets continue to trap and kill marine life long after they are lost or abandoned. Plastic bottles, containers, bags, and tiny microplastics are also present in overwhelming quantities. Everyday items used for moments now persist in the ocean for centuries. It is a sobering thought. The convenience of today has created an environmental burden that will last for generations. We are only just beginning to understand the full extent of this plastic sea. How does so much of our household waste end up in the vastness of the ocean? The journey often begins simply. It starts with a plastic bottle dropped on the street or a plastic bag caught by the wind. This litter can be washed into drains by rainwater. From the drains it travels into rivers, and rivers, as we know, almost always lead to the sea. It is a slow, relentless creep of pollution. Each piece of plastic, no matter how small, contributes to the growing problem. Many of us might not even realize the connection between a piece of dropped litter and the distant garbage patches. Historically, our relationship with waste was different. Natural materials would decompose, but then came plastic. A wonder material, cheap, durable and versatile. Its invention in the 20th century revolutionized industries. It made many aspects of life more convenient. However, its very durability is now its greatest curse. Plastic does not truly biodegrade like organic matter. It breaks down, but incredibly slowly. It fragments into smaller and smaller pieces. These pieces can persist in the environment for hundreds, even thousands of years. Our consumption of single-use plastics in particular has exploded in recent decades. The sheer volume of plastic produced is astounding. Globally, we produce hundreds of millions of tons of plastic each year. A significant portion of this is designed for single-use. Packaging, bottles, cutlery, items used for mere minutes can pollute for centuries. Poor waste management in many parts of the world exacerbates the problem. Inadequate collection systems, open landfills near waterways, and illegal dumping all contribute. Even in countries with advanced recycling systems, not all plastic is recycled. Some is too contaminated or too difficult or simply not economical to process. This often means it ends up in landfill or worse, escaping into the environment. Beyond litter and poor waste management, there are other pathways. Industrial discharge can release plastic pellets known as nurdles directly into waterways. Fishing gear, as mentioned, is a major contributor when lost or discarded at sea. Even washing our clothes releases tiny synthetic fibers into the wastewater system. These microfibers can eventually reach the ocean. These sources are numerous and widespread. It paints a complex picture. Our everyday lives, our industries, and our infrastructure are all implicated in this flow of plastic towards the sea. It is a global system with a very leaky tap. As plastic debris floats in the ocean, something remarkable yet worrying happens. It doesn't remain inert. It becomes a habitat. A new artificial ecosystem begins to form on its surface. Scientists have given this phenomenon a name, the plastisphere. It is a community of microscopic life, bacteria, algae, fungi, and tiny organisms that colonize the surface of plastic fragments. This is a world entirely of our own making, a novel environment within the ocean. It is a testament to life's ability to adapt, but also a sign of how deeply our pollution is changing the marine world. The organisms that thrive in the plastisphere are often different from those found in the surrounding water or on natural floating materials like wood. Some microbes seem to be uniquely adapted to living on plastic. They might even be capable of slowly degrading some types of plastic. But this process is incredibly slow. It is not a solution to the plastic problem. The plastisphere creates tiny mobile islands. These plastic rafts can transport microbes across vast ocean distances. This has potential consequences. It could mean that species, including potentially harmful bacteria or pathogens, are carried to new regions where they don't belong. This new microbial community also changes the properties of the plastic itself. Biofilms, slimy layers created by these microbes, can make the plastic smell or taste like food to some marine animals. This increases the chances of ingestion. The plastic can also absorb other persistent organic pollutants, POPs, from the seawater. These toxic chemicals concentrate on the surface of the plastic. So the plastic becomes not just a physical hazard, but also a chemical one. The plastisphere essentially turns plastic debris into tiny toxic pills, drifting through the ocean, waiting to be consumed. The ecological impact of the plastisphere is still being studied, but it is clear that it represents a significant alteration of the marine environment. It introduces new surfaces, new communities, and new ways for organisms and chemicals to interact. It adds another layer of complexity to the plastic pollution problem. We are not just dealing with inert pieces of litter. We are dealing with active, evolving micro-ecosystems that have unknown long-term effects on the health of our oceans. The discovery of the plastisphere highlights how profoundly our waste is reshaping the natural world, even at a microscopic level. Section 5. Silent victims, marine life in a plastic prison. The most visible and heart-wrenching impact of plastic pollution is on marine life. Animals become entangled in larger pieces of plastic. Sea turtles, for example, can get caught in discarded fishing nets or plastic bags. Once entangled, they may be unable to swim, feed, or surface for air. This often leads to a slow, painful death by drowning or starvation. Seals and sea lions are also frequent victims. Young, curious animals can get loops of plastic packaging or net fragments around their necks. As they grow, these restraints tighten, causing horrific injuries and infections. Ingestion of plastic is another major threat. Many marine animals mistake plastic for food. Seabirds, such as albatrosses, skim the ocean surface for squid and fish eggs. They often pick up plastic bottle caps, lighters, and other small fragments. They then feed these items to their chicks. The chicks' stomachs fill with indigestible plastic. This leaves no room for actual food, leading to starvation. Whales, too, have been found washed ashore with stomachs full of plastic bags and other debris. They mistake these items for jellyfish or squid, their natural prey. It is a tragic case of mistaken identity with fatal consequences. Even the smallest creatures are affected. Zooplankton, the tiny organisms at the base of the marine food web, can ingest microplastics. These tiny plastic particles are then passed up the food chain. Small fish eat the zooplankton, larger fish eat the smaller fish, and so on, all the way up to top predators like dolphins, sharks, and even humans. Each step can concentrate the plastics and any associated toxins. This bioaccumulation means that animals higher up the food chain can end up with significant levels of plastic-related contaminants in their bodies. The full effects of this are still being researched. The problem is pervasive. It affects animals in every ocean, from the surface waters to the deepest trenches. It impacts creatures of all sizes, from the smallest plankton to the largest whales. Plastic debris can also damage sensitive habitats. Coral reefs can be smothered by plastic bags or abraded by larger pieces of debris. This physical damage adds to the stress already faced by corals due to warming waters and ocean acidification. The presence of plastic is an additional burden on already struggling marine ecosystems. It is a constant, unwelcome intruder in their natural world. Section 6. The invisible menace, microplastics in our food, our bodies. Beyond the visible chunks of plastic, there is a more insidious threat: microplastics. These are tiny plastic particles generally defined as smaller than 5 millimeters in size. Some are manufactured intentionally, like microbeads in cosmetics, though these are increasingly being banned. Most microplastics, however, are formed from the breakdown of larger plastic items. Sunlight, wind, and wave action degrade plastic bags, bottles, and fishing nets into ever smaller fragments. These tiny pieces are now found throughout the global ocean, from the surface to the seabed, and even frozen in Arctic sea ice. These microplastics easily enter the marine food web. As we've seen, zooplankton and other small organisms ingest them. When fish and shellfish consume these organisms, the microplastics are transferred to their tissues. Studies have found microplastics in a wide variety of seafood that humans consume. Mussels, oysters, fish, and shrimp have all been shown to contain these tiny plastic particles. So, when we eat seafood, there is a growing likelihood that we are also ingesting microplastics. The thought is unsettling. Our own pollution is quite literally ending up on our dinner plates. The potential effects of microplastics on human health are a growing area of scientific research and concern. The plastics themselves can be problematic, but also, as we know, microplastics can absorb and concentrate toxic chemicals from the surrounding seawater. These chemicals include persistent organic pollutants, POPs, like PCBs and pesticides. When we ingest microplastics, we may also be ingesting these concentrated toxins. There are concerns that these particles and chemicals could cause inflammation, disrupt hormone function, or have other negative health impacts. More research is urgently needed to understand the full risks. The presence of microplastics is not just limited to seafood. They have been found in tap water, bottled water, salt beer, and even honey. They are in the air we breathe, released from synthetic textiles and other sources. This means our exposure is likely widespread and from multiple pathways. The challenge is immense because these particles are so small and pervasive. Cleaning them up from the environment is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, with current technologies. The focus, therefore, must be on preventing more plastic from entering the environment in the first place. We must turn off the tap. Section 7. Pointing fingers. Who bears responsibility for this plastic blight? The question of who is responsible for the ocean plastic crisis is complex. It is easy to point fingers, but the reality is that responsibility is shared. It stretches from individual consumers to multinational corporations and all the way to national governments and international bodies. Each of us as individuals makes choices every day that contribute to the problem or potentially to the solution. Our consumption patterns, our preference for convenience, and how we dispose of our waste all play a role. If we demand single-use plastics, companies will continue to produce them. Corporations that produce and sell plastic products also bear a significant responsibility. For decades, the focus has been on producing cheap, disposable items with little regard for their end-of-life impact. Packaging design often prioritizes marketing and convenience over recyclability. Some companies have been slow to invest in sustainable alternatives or to take responsibility for the waste generated by their products. The concept of extended producer responsibility, EPR, where companies are responsible for the entire life cycle of their products, including disposal, is gaining traction but is not yet widely implemented with full effect. Governments, too, have a crucial role to play. They can enact legislation to ban certain problematic single-use plastics. They can invest in better waste management and recycling infrastructure. They can set targets for plastic reduction and recycling rates. They can also provide incentives for businesses to innovate and adopt more sustainable practices. International cooperation is essential because ocean currents do not respect national borders. Plastic pollution is a global problem that requires coordinated global solutions. Treaties and agreements are needed to tackle issues like plastic waste from shipping and fishing. Ultimately, the plastic problem is a symptom of a larger issue, a linear take, make, dispose economy. We extract resources, manufacture products, use them, often briefly, and then throw them away. This model is unsustainable on a finite planet. We need to transition towards a circular economy. In a circular economy, resources are kept in use for as long as possible. Products are designed for durability and recyclability. Waste is minimized and materials are recovered and reused. This requires a fundamental shift in thinking and practice across all sectors of society. The burden and the opportunity is shared. Section 8. Murky waters, corporate influence and the plastic problem. The role of large corporations in the plastic pollution crisis extends beyond just production. There have been concerted efforts by some parts of the plastics industry over many decades to shape public perception and policy. This is not always a straightforward conspiracy, but rather a complex interplay of lobbying, public relations campaigns, and funding of certain narratives. For a long time, the emphasis was placed heavily on individual responsibility for littering and recycling. This conveniently shifted the focus away from the producers of plastic and the inherent problems with the material itself, especially single-use items. Consider the history of recycling. While recycling is a positive action, it has often been promoted as the ultimate solution by those who produce plastic. However, the reality is that only a small percentage of plastic ever produced has actually been recycled. Many types of plastic are difficult or uneconomical to recycle. The infrastructure is often lacking. Yet the promise of recyclability has allowed for continued and even increased production of virgin plastics. This creates a situation where consumers feel they are doing their part by sorting waste, while the fundamental issue of overproduction is not adequately addressed. Some corporations have also actively lobbied against regulations aimed at reducing plastic use. This can include fighting bans on plastic bags, opposing bottle deposit schemes, or resisting measures that would make them financially responsible for the waste their products create. This opposition can slow down progress towards meaningful solutions. It creates a challenging environment for policymakers who are trying to address the plastic crisis. The immense financial resources and political influence of large industries can make it difficult to implement the systemic changes that are truly needed to stem the tide of plastic. It is important to acknowledge that many companies are now beginning to take steps in the right direction. Some are setting ambitious targets for recycled content, investing in research for alternative materials, and redesigning packaging to be more sustainable. However, the scale and urgency of the problem require much faster and more widespread action. Transparency is key. Consumers and policymakers need clear information about what companies are doing, not just what they are saying. Greenwashing, where companies spend more on marketing their sustainability efforts than on actual environmental improvements, remains a concern. Scrutiny and accountability are vital. Section 9. Currents of change. Hope on the horizon for cleaner oceans. Despite the daunting scale of the plastic pollution problem, there is reason for hope. A global awakening is underway. People around the world are more aware than ever of the impact of plastic on our oceans. This increased awareness is driving change at all levels, from individual actions to international agreements. Young people in particular are passionately advocating for a cleaner future. Their voices are powerful. They are demanding that businesses and governments take responsibility and act decisively. This groundswell of public concern is a crucial catalyst for progress. Innovative technologies are being developed to help tackle the plastic already in our oceans and to prevent more from entering. Organizations are designing and deploying systems to capture plastic debris from rivers and coastal areas before it reaches the open sea. Others are working on methods to remove plastic from the ocean gyres themselves, although this is an immense challenge. Scientists are also exploring new ways to break down plastics, including using enzymes or chemical recycling processes that can turn waste plastic back into valuable raw materials. These technological advancements offer new tools in our fight against plastic pollution. Policy changes are also gaining momentum. More and more countries and cities are implementing bans or taxes on single-use plastic items like bags, straws and cutlery. Extended producer responsibility schemes are being adopted, making manufacturers more accountable for the end of life of their products. There are ongoing negotiations for a global plastics treaty, which could establish legally binding targets and regulations to address plastic pollution throughout its entire life cycle. Such an agreement would be a landmark achievement, signaling a united global commitment to solving this crisis. The future of our oceans depends on the choices we make today. While the challenge is significant, it is not insurmountable. By reducing our reliance on single-use plastics, improving waste management, supporting innovation and demanding systemic change, we can turn the tide. Every bottle refused, every bag reused, every policy implemented, and every new technology developed is a step in the right direction. The journey towards cleaner oceans will be long and will require sustained effort. But with collective will and continued action, we can protect these vital ecosystems for generations to come. There is indeed hope on the horizon.